Good everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have the 2000 subscriber special, the Q&A. This is a milestone that, I'll be brutally honest, I never thought I'd hit. This is a milestone that has been on my mind for quite a while now, and obviously the way I wanted to do it was I wanted to do a Q&A. And I figured the Q&A was the safe option because I literally couldn't think of anything else, and I'd probably look a twat if I thought of something else. So, before we begin, these questions are going to be in the description, so if you want to skip ahead to the specific question that you may want to see, they'll all be in the description, so feel free to have a look. And one last thing before we begin, honestly, thank you all so much for this milestone. It means really a lot to me, and now we get to celebrate. This is an early morning brain speaking here. Now we get to really look and remember this milestone for what it truly is. So, starting out with question number 1 from It's Rainy Boy. What pushed you to start playing War Thunder? I'll be brutally honest, it was more, shall we say, out of curiosity. Basically, when I started playing this game, I was in year 10 in secondary school, which probably be I don't know how the grades work in USA, but probably be the 8th grade or something. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember how they work. Might be the 10th grade. I think they're very similar, but you know. I started playing the game because mainly I wanted to have a bit more gaming repertoire, so to speak. So what I mean by that is I wanted to expand my gaming knowledge because, as you all know, I've been playing games since I was about 3 years old. If you didn't know that, you do know that now, because I still have the Game Boy that I started playing the game with. But what pushed me to mainly start playing War Thunder was the fact that it was a game that really caught my interest, because obviously I've always had an interest in history. It was a game that some of my friends were watching YouTube videos on, and I really wanted to give it a go for myself. So that's when I started. I could have started earlier had I wanted to. I probably could have started around 2013 because I had the old PC back then. It's just I didn't even know War Thunder existed at that time. So, you know, it's one of those things where had I known about the game earlier, I could have had some more rare vehicles, things like that, and maybe played the game a little bit more longer and stuff like that. But I mean, that's not really going to bother me too much because at the end of the day, I've had a blast, and fair enough, I've had to take a few breaks every so often. Everyone does from games. But generally speaking, it was just down to curiosity, mainly, and also the fact that I wanted to expand my knowledge. So, question number 2. Do you enjoy entertaining people? The short answer is yes. It's something that I've always wanted to do, because it's something that really kind of lacks in the world. I mean, sure, you get those self-quoted comedians, and they're not really that funny, because look at, I don't know, what's his face, Alan Carr, who I can't stand, mostly because of his voice. His voice is very annoying. But self-proclaimed comedians, they're not really, proving anything that's entertaining, and the thing is that it's something I like doing because it just brings me a personal bit of satisfaction, if that makes sense. So, for example, I give a lot of dad jokes to people IRL and on videos sometimes. I do it on the Discord server. I obviously crack jokes that are normal. And obviously, when I started the channel, it was something that I thought I could do as a hobby and didn't really think, oh, this won't go very far. But then I thought, well, this is actually going a bit better than I thought, so let's go to more entertaining and more informative. And that's really where I went with that. And it's something that I've always tried to perfect, so to speak. And it's something that obviously I know I can still work on, but generally speaking, I prefer the way I do things nowadays than when I did when I was younger. Because when I was younger, I was very self-centered. I wasn't very, shall we say, communicative. I wasn't really that socialized. I wasn't a social person back then because I was still young. I mean, I'm still relatively young now compared to some of my audience, but you get my point. When I was at 10 or 11, I wasn't very social with people. I had a very small friend circle, if that makes sense. Quite a few people had that, to be fair, but I was one of them. And that's why, as I've gotten older, I've obviously perfected myself. I've obviously tried to better myself, and I've also tried to just be myself. And that's pretty much what I do by entertaining people. I want to show people that I've obviously changed as a person, and I can pretty much just do what I want now and just chill, really. And entertaining people is something that I enjoy doing, and well, as long as I hear one person laugh at my jokes or they find a video interesting, I'm doing exactly that. Let's move on to Sir Flying Faulty Ears questions. So, his first question is, what is, in your opinion, the absolutely worst kind of music people listen to? There is a very easy answer for this, and that is rap. So, for those that don't live in the United Kingdom, because if you don't know, that's where I'm from, there's actually a question later on which also covers that. As someone who lives here, there is a lot of rap music, or as I call it, crap music, because that's just what it is. And these music types tend to bring in the wrong crowd, so to speak. If you've never heard of that, it's where you have like someone falls into the wrong crowd, so they're not going with the right people. They fall into the wrong friend groups and stuff like that, and then they end up being like, well, what we would nickname as roadmen. As in other words, people who try to be badasses and try to be hard and all that, and they are not really that. They can only fight in groups. They talk a lot of shit, and they shall we say, they're all bark no bite, basically, a lot of the times. And rap is a lot of things that really bring that in. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some good raps out there, but the problem is that those are very few and far between. And generally speaking, it comes down to, shall we say, the friend circle that the person who is listening to said music goes into. And sadly, a lot of the rap music is crap, there's no other word of putting it, and most importantly, it's one of those things where it's just, it inspires people to fall into the wrong crowd because of the music, and obviously when they're in the wrong crowd, that is where it starts to get worse for them, and it just goes from there, really. So it to me, rap is just one of those things that I think could die off and no one would really miss it apart from the people who are in those wrong crowds. So yeah, that's probably my worst kind of music that people listen to. Otherwise, I have no real problem with most of the other genres, and well, my Spotify playlist has all sorts. It definitely does not have rap. Next up is, do you have any role models that maybe inspired you on your YouTube journey? Well, there's actually a couple. Number one is Mr. Hairy Feet. He really inspired me to get going. He was one of the first, really. But the true first role model was a YouTuber called the Digital Time Traveler. Now, you've probably not heard of that name, and if you go to your Google search or your YouTube search, you will no longer find that name. I'm going to give a bit of a story for that, but obviously I'm going to keep it short because obviously we have other questions to do. The Digital Time Traveler was a 50-plus year old YouTuber who only really had about 150 subs when I first found him, I think it was. And he used to make a lot of videos covering aircraft in reviews, so to speak. He didn't do tanks, but we eventually got him to play tanks as we got along and all that. And what happened with him was he had his YouTube account hacked. And, well, up to that point, we'd been working together. We obviously did have a bit of issue, which was sorted out. But the fact that he was very professional throughout it, and he really, was just such a nice person about it. He gave me tips. When I first started my channel, he even gave me a shout out. We used to have a good bit of banter. We used to just... We occasionally play with each other when he wasn't busy, and when I wasn't busy, because remember, I was in college. And it's something that really, the way he was and the way he structured his videos is very similar to how I do mine, except he doesn't do a hanger section. That's the only thing he never did. That's the thing that I do. But otherwise, the gameplay and the description and the way he talks about it is very similar to how I do things now. And that's kind of my way of honouring him, because whilst his account got hacked, and obviously he's not come back since, he does still live in my mind, and I've never met him IRL. I'd love to, but he's obviously very busy because, well, yeah, he's an older gentleman. I would probably go to him and probably buy him a pint, I'll be brutally honest, but yeah, he was definitely the top one. Probably third place would be Fly Daily, but Fly Daily is more of a, shall we say, that he isn't like top dog, because obviously he wasn't really like always inspiring. Like, he was more just positive, which was always good, but generally speaking it was Harry and Digital Time Traveler. So those are the two. Moving on to K Kara's questions. Obviously these are, just to reiterate, these are the YouTube handles. There aren't actually their usernames. Okay, so starting out with question number 1. What is your all-time favourite game besides War Thunder? Okay, that's going to be quite a difficult one to answer. There's a lot of candidates here, and there is many candidates, let's just say that. So I'm going to list off a few, and I don't know, maybe you guys can judge me for it. Number 1, RuneScape. I don't know if you all remember that, but nowadays it's a bit crap, so I don't really play it anymore, which is kind of sad. Number 2, The Simpsons Hit and Run. If you have not heard of that game, you have been living under a rock. Number 3, Skyrim. I know Skyrim's quite a controversial one because they keep re-releasing it, but it's always nice to just play it, and just there's always something to do, and there's always a new character to try with a new build, things like that, and it's always interesting to see how that build does. And even though I know the enemies off by heart now, the fact that you can pretty much plan yourself around the character that you want to make is just more interesting for me. And then probably 4th place would be Pokemon Sapphire, and I say that because Pokemon Sapphire was the very first Pokemon game that I played. I never beat it as a kid, and I went back to it when I was 17, and I ended up beating it with, what was my team? I think it was a Blaziken. Well, I picked Blaziken because I always picked Fire Styles. What else was there? There was, I think, I don't remember the team off my heart, but I'd have to have a look. But yeah, I really do enjoy all those games I just listed there. I don't really have a favourite other than War Thunder, because like there's that many games I've played over the years, I can't list them all. Another candidate would probably be The Last of Us. The Last of Us 2 isn't there because whilst it is a very good game, it did have its issues. The Last of Us 1 was amazing. And final candidate for that would be the first God of War. It's not the second one, Ragnarok, because I haven't played that yet, and I need to get around to that. And the second question is a bit of an odd one, and I actually had to do some research for this. So, for those of you that don't know, I'm not American, and some people think I am. I don't know why. And this is a question of, do you think that was a good call by the ref at the end of Super Bowl LV II? Ruined such a good game. As I said, I had to do some research to this, because obviously I don't watch rugby, which is what it is. It's not football. Americans call it football. It's not football. Football is where you actually kick a ball, and their version of football is literally a round ball shaped like a rugby ball. So as far as I'm concerned, it's called rugby. But anyway, instead of ripping the Americans apart for rugby and all that, yeah, it's one of those things really. Like, looking at what I've seen online, it didn't seem like a good decision from the referee, I'll be brutally honest, but I mean, to be fair, most referees are bent in one way or another, and they're normally biased towards one side. I mean, look at the World Cup and how that went when Britain faced, I think it was France. Did we face the French, or was it the Argentinians? I don't remember who. I don't remember who we faced, but the ref was super biased against the British, and we lost quite a few penalties because of the ref not giving them. And that's the thing, like, sports itself, that's why I don't really watch sports. And things like Formula One is literally the only thing I'll watch, and even then, there's bent teams in that. I mean, look at Red Bull and how that's gone. Max Verstappen, two-time world champion. People keep saying, no, he's a two-time bent champion because he hasn't won a single championship. He was practically hand-fed one by the rules in 2021, and 2022, it was discovered that his team went over budget. And I know they tried to claim it was catering. That is complete bollocks because their car was just so much faster than everyone else's. So I definitely think that it comes down to a lot of things when it comes to sport, and I don't really tend to watch sport anymore. But Formula One's probably the only one, and, well, to be honest, Formula One's kind of gone downhill since Michael Schumacher stopped driving, and that's going to be my brutal opinion. But anyway, let's move on to the next question. So we have, obviously, these are YouTube handles, as I said already. These are, well, this is from Sorry My Bad. I think his name was Mohammed on his YouTube channel, the full name. And his first question is, what do you think about the current state of the game? That's a tough one. So I'm gonna go in, like, shall we say, tier order. So tier 1, it's not too bad. I mean, Coastal is unbalanced as fuck. That's all I'm gonna say on that regard. So I wouldn't say Coastal is very balanced, and when you're fighting destroyers, it's more down to skill, but that's fair enough. I don't mind that. And when it comes to Blue Water, if you meet something that's max up tier, which you will, there's not really a lot you can do to them, which you can still, like, HE them and stuff like that, which is fair enough because you're not always going to be able to kill every ship with sap. But even so, when it comes to tanks, the low tiers are generally quite good, except for a couple of candidates, aka B1 Tur in a down tier, B1 Biz in a down tier, M4A3 105. So that's really where it stems from there. Tier 2 to Tier 3 is pretty well balanced, I feel. Like, there are a couple of BRs that could be changed. I'm looking at you, XP50. You could probably go to 5.0 and not give a shit. But, you know, that's coming from someone who likes the XP50 quite a bit. Tier 4, there are some outliers, and there definitely needs to be some balance changes to some of the vehicles. I mean, the JU288 could easily go to 6.7 and no one would care, because it would still club quite hard. Then you've got stuff like then you've got the jets, where the SU11 is still only 7.3. It's got 8.0 performance. So get that up to 8.0 minimum at least right now, because that thing is just breaking. Well, it's stopping me from spading any jets. That's why you've not really seen any jet reviews be worked on in a while, because it's just not fun. And the one time I take out a Russian jet, I get up tiered to 8.0, and I can't really do much because the Su-11s are strapped up with bombs. So there you go. Tier 6, Tier 7, and Tier 8, that's a clusterfuck. There's no polite word of putting it. Same for the tanks, really. The tanks, they are just who can fire on the move the best, who has the most penetration, because armor means nothing. And it's just something that I think they really need to go back to the drawing board on some of the state of the game, like parts of the game at least. Some parts of the game are fine, but personally, that's what I would suggest, really. Next up is, what lineup do you enjoy the most? And that's a pretty simple one. There was an old lineup, which has actually gotten a buff recently, and I'm not going to tell you it. But that's for you to discover. There's an old German 1.0/1.3 lineup, which I used to have, called the Clubbers. And, well, it doesn't really do that anymore, because the amount of people that just stat pad in low tier, the lineup is very, very strong, but it just can't compete against people who just do things like that. But there was stuff like the Panzer IV-C, multiple Panzer IIs, Flak Panzer 38. For your air support, you now have the R2 Stuka, which, yeah, you might want to use that. And for general support, it's quite good. I mean, it's definitely got, shall we say, like, It's got its flaws. Every lineup has its flaws, but if I'm ever in a bad mood, I sometimes take that lineup out. I haven't done it for a while though. Other than that, I would probably say the Russian 3-7 lineup for tanks. And that's mainly because of how much crap I can just throw in it and not give a shit. If I want to take something that's like 1-0 and up tier it to 3-7, generally they don't seem to care. Same with the planes. I mean, the planes can be a bit lacking because obviously you do sometimes have to use the P63 to fill in the gap, and obviously the P63 is a premium. But generally speaking, those are lineups I tend to go to just to really enjoy the game a bit more. Other than that, it really comes down to my personal preference and just what I decide to play. Probably third place would be the British 2-7 lineup, and that's without the Matilda, because I don't like the Matilda. But other than that, those lineups are pretty solid, and generally they just offer a lot for me, really. And moving on to the next lot of questions, we have the Munchkin. Man, am I happy for you. Question number 1. Why did stop... He means his English isn't his first language, just to reiterate. So, some of his spelling and sentence structure may not be the best, but don't worry about that. Why did you start YouTubing in the first place? Well, that's a really good question. The short answer is I wanted to start uploading some gameplay, and I wanted to start showcasing some of my own footage and things like that. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you've skipped it, I'll give a brief, shall we say, brief description. The YouTuber, the Digital Time Traveler, used to have a lot of my old replays on his channel, and he used to really feature in my replays, because obviously some replays I sent to him were crap, some replays were good, some replays were godlike, and that's obviously, since his channel is obviously no longer here with us, he obviously cannot feature, shall we say, any more videos of mine. And obviously I'm still going to get incredible runs every so often, and I wanted a place to really keep those memories and remember that I've done these things. So that's really why I started the channel. So, for example, my first 2 videos are non-commentary, they're literally just replays, and the first one is a kill streak that has not been broken to this day, and also a dogfight with a Spitfire in a Ori 2001. And generally speaking, it's something that, obviously, as I've mentioned before, I spotted a gap in the market. Now, if you've never heard that term, it's a business term, so don't be expected to know it. But essentially what it means is you spot something that hasn't really been done, or hasn't been done in a specific way, and you capitalize on that, and you start doing that, as in that's what you're really looking to do, and so to speak. And that's really what I wanted to do when I started doing my reviews the way I did, the premium reviews, the gameplay, the series and things like that, the Talisman series. And just overall, everything else is what I wanted to do. And obviously, over time, the Spade review, which is probably one of the first formats I started doing, that obviously has been upgraded significantly now. And obviously, we know the tables from now on. And like I said, it's just something that I saw a gap in the market, and I really thought that was going to be what I wanted to do, so to speak. And now we come on to quite a controversial one. Question number 2. Do you think gaming affects children's brains in a harmful or a good way, and why? My own opinion. Right, so this is going to be quite a controversial opinion, so don't expect to hear anything that's going to sound too pleasing, because trust me, I've been playing games all my life. It really just needs to be said, I think. So, as I mentioned before, obviously I've been playing games most of my life, 20 years in fact, this year, because I'll be 23 this year, but generally speaking, it comes down to, 1, the game they're playing, 2, the, shall we say, the disabilities of the child, because I know that sounds a bit interesting, but you've got to remember, in this day and age, it's not uncommon for someone to have a disability. And ADHD and other things like that is generally what tends to cause it. And I mean undiagnosed ADHD and other things like that. And just general, like, it also comes down to how the parents are themselves. Like, does one parent have anger issues? Does the kid really develop them from that? And obviously what game they're playing. If they're constantly getting killed in, like, Call of Duty or something and they're like 10 years old, they're obviously raging, getting angry, things like that. And whilst games do have a bit of an effect on that, I don't think it's as bad as people think. And I say that because, yes, War Thunder frustrates people. It frustrates me. But there's no reason to really get angry at something. You're not being killed IRL. This isn't some sort of, like, IRL VR game where you die if you die in the game, if that makes sense. Like it's some sort of horror movie or something like that. But generally speaking, I think it just needs to come down to good discipline, good time management, well, when to take a break, really, and just things like that. And that would make a huge difference on what gaming does to children's brains. And obviously it also depends on what games they're playing. Heck, I've been playing 18 since I was 9 years old. So there you go. Like, yes, I did, and obviously I did have anger issues back then, but that's one thing I've tried to better about myself, and obviously I've been guided towards that by parents and friends and things like that, and that's what's made me who I am today. Sure, I do lose my temper, but everyone loses their temper. So in my personal opinion, I don't think it's as bad as people think, but I do think a lot of it comes down to, shall we say, it comes down to things that aren't diagnosed, and it also comes down to the games they're playing, and it also comes down to what the parents were like when they were younger, because that can actually affect how you are as a person. Moving on to the next questions, we have Bertie Burt. This is one of my moderators. Question number 1. Who is your favourite German? There's not many, and, well, there's not many to choose from. But I'd probably say it's probably Willy Messerschmidt. I'm only taking the piss because I love the BF109, but Bertie mainly asked this one for a joke. And well, Bertie's been by my side for many years, and he's been my mod for like 3 years, 4 years, I think, and he's never let me down. He's a cracking bloke, and he's fair enough. He has his moments where he's a grumpy bastard, but that's just Bertie being Bertie and Bertie being German and all that. But honestly, if I didn't have Bertie in some of my decision making on like Discord and having him to just really like discuss things with, it would be a bit different. Like it would be a lot like the Discord server would probably be a lot different because he is obviously very like, he puts his hammer down and that's it. Like he knows what he wants, so to speak. Whilst I normally tend to look at things from both sides. But with Bertie, the fact that he's done some of that and we've actually dealt with some of the problems in the server because of that, honestly, Bertie, you're pretty much up there, and I will say that. And question number 2, why haven't you done a video on the mighty mouse yet? Short answer, I don't have it unlocked. I do have it with like 60 KRP left to finish, I think, but I've just never unlocked it. And there's a simple answer. The mouse is stupid. Well, it's stupid in the context of the game right now. There's that much heat slinging, which just goes straight through the turret front and the hull. It's slow as heck, and sometimes on some maps you won't even get halfway to the battlefield before someone drops an AD4's 2,000 pounder on your head. And just overall, it doesn't seem that fun. And whilst I'm sure people can get some really good kill matches in a down tier and sometimes even an up tier, the fact is that you've got to know so many different vehicles, you've got to know exactly where to shoot, and to me, that just doesn't seem that fun. So that's generally why I haven't done a video on the mouse. Next up, we have Admiral 6Y2, again, one of my moderators. Congrats, Joe Mama. Q&A. Numero uno. What is your favourite plane and why is it the P108A? It is not that sack of crap, that is for sure. And I can definitely tell you that my favourite plane would probably be, if I had to rank it, would be the B-18B, also known as Big Sven. And that's been a plane that has gotten me through so much. It's unbelievable. It's my top played vehicle. That's probably why it's 4.0. I'm sorry. But it's one of those planes that has never really let me down. It can do carries, it can do bombing missions, it can do rocket attacks for like carpet rocketing, as I call it. And it's just so versatile in what it can do. It can get me wins. Sometimes on a good day it'll get me a first strike. And it's a bomber that's never let me down. And personally speaking, a lot more people do not need to underestimate it, because a lot of people do. They just see a bomber and go, oh, it's a bomber, it's not going to be useful. Might want to rethink your choice on Big Sven there. As for a fighter, I'd probably say... that's a pretty difficult one. I'd probably say one of the BF-109s, and I don't mean the F4 because obviously that got a gun nerf. I'd probably rank it as the E4 or the E7 for my favourite plane, because just of how good they are amazing. And favourite strike aircraft would probably, well, in fact there's no probably about it, it would be the IL-2 Sturmovik, because I've never had a problem with that plane, and, well, it can do pretty much anything I need it to do. Numero dos, aka second question. What is your least favourite tank? Oh god, there's a few. There's generally quite a few, and this is going to be quite a controversial opinion. I'm going to have to say the Churchill 7 is one of them, and I know a lot of people love that tank. The problem is it's just so easy to counter it, and I'm not even joking. I took it out the other day to like grind the last of the skins on it. I only need like a couple of kills on the tech tree one. Still got a ways to go on the crocodile though. And the amount of times people would just shoot the gun barrel or shoot the turret roof and one-shot me is not even funny. And the amount of SU-152s and ISU-152s that were running around was just ridiculous. And yeah, it's one of those tanks that is just very unfun to play. If you get a down tier, God help you. Well, God help the enemy team more like. But even then, they still have guns that can go through you, and they can just shoot the gun barrel and go around you. And of course, their 4.7 tanks can also deal with you. As for another real, like, candidate for that, it would probably have to be... I know this might come as controversial, again, but I'm going to have to say the VK3002N. Now, if you don't know what that is the tech tree German Panther prototype, as I nickname it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why do I not like it? It's got a 75mm gun from the Panther, it trades a bit of armour, and is much faster. That's not the problem. The problem is that German teams just hold W until they die, and that thing makes them do that quicker, and they normally tend to one and done if they do that. I really don't think that tank should have been a tech tree. I really think it should have been a premium, but you know, that's a story for another day. Next question we have from Black Mark. Number 1. When video about crew training come out? That came out a few weeks ago. Probably about a month, nearly 2 months ago. Feel free to go find that. It covers both planes and tanks. And doesn't cover naval, but it generally gives over what you need to really learn, what you really need to do to guarantee you get the best crew points and things like that. So yeah, that video is there for you. It's already come out. Feel free to go have a look for that. And yeah, that one's pretty simple to answer, to be honest. Number 2. Any chance you play Cold War vehicles? It depends on my mood. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends on the mood, and it really depends on whether I want to be heat FS from across the map. And yeah, there is one vehicle I've been eyeing up to play, and that is the Jagdpanzer IV, I think it is, the little tank destroyer with the 90mm. I know that's not a very good vehicle on paper, but I just like its character. It looks charm, it's got charm. And obviously that will prepare me for later on with like the ATGM launchers and things like that. And generally speaking, they do look pretty fun, and I am looking to start spading some more higher tier tanks. So that's at least going to be something that I can look forward to. Next up, we have the Board Game Brothers, and he's a relatively new subscriber to the channel, and he wanted to leave me some questions. What tank, plane, and nation is the best for beginners? That's a pretty good one. For tank, the M4A3 teaches you slow turret traverse, teaches you to turn your vehicle with the hull, and also teaches you derp guns, because that's always nice, and also teaches you the power of the 50 cal on top of the tank. As for a plane, I'd probably say some of the BF-109s, as I've said before. The Yaks are also pretty good for teaching people, although you have to be very careful with the wing ripping and all that. Then the Japanese with the Zeros is also pretty good, but of course that mainly relies on, obviously, opportunistic targeting, as I call it. You can't obviously catch a lot of things in a Zero, and that's really what doesn't help it. And finally, nation is the best for beginners. Well, this is going to be quite a funny answer, because I'm probably going to have to do a video on this and cover my opinion. And it's probably going to get a lot of hate. And that nation is China. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh god, Joe's a China main. No. The simple fact is that China has so many different playstyles to learn. And whilst that may seem a lot on paper for a new player, the fact is that they can pick and choose what they want, and they have so much option. And the simple fact of the matter is that they just have that option. They can go and play a Kai-61. They can go and play a P-43 Lancer. They can go and play P-47s. They can go and play Kai-27. Things like that. And there's just so many different options. And obviously in the premium line, there's the Hawk 3, which I absolutely adore. There's the Kai-45, which teaches them twin engines, because China really lacks a twin engine aircraft in the tech tree. I mean, there's the Mosquito, but that's not very good. And then, of course, you have the Chinese Zero. And that, to me, is just, like, it's one of those things. Like, China's just got so much to offer for a new player, and I'm not even talking about the tanks either. Like, the tank tree needs a bit of a, like, it needs bolstering, I will say. But obviously, when a new patch drops, we are getting a 222. Obviously, you will get a review on that. Same with a German one. I'll probably do them separate, because they're entirely different. And, yeah, that's probably what I'd say is the best nation, and I'm obviously going to probably do a video on that to, like, put my points in, so to speak. Number 2, what country are you in? Well, that's pretty obvious if you've been watching the entire thing. I'm a Brit, and some people think I'm American for some bloody reason, as we saw earlier with the Super Bowl question. Honestly, the amount of people that think I'm American is quite funny, but no, I'm not American. I'm across the pond on what was the best empire in the world, although they did some very questionable things during that time period. Also, congrats on 2000. Thank you very much, because I think you was actually the 2000th subscriber, so thank you for that, Board Game Brothers. Moving on to the next question, we have Ugarit with, well, he says, I'll drop a good one here. He means he'll drop a few here. What unconventional food types do you like the most? Not pizza. Yeah, obviously he's been listening, because I don't actually like pizza. I know that comes as quite a controversial thing. I think it's overrated, and, well, it's just not very nice. It's just very dry and boring, and, yeah, that's just that. As for unconventional, I do love a bit of a curry every so often. I'd probably say lamb is another one that I enjoy. I know that seems horrible, but trust me. Good bit of lamb in, like, meatballs and stuff like that. Oh, they're godlike. Lamb burgers as well. Whew, that's delicious. Another thing as well is venison. I don't know if any of you guys have tried venison. That is delish. I tried that once in secondary school because I forgot my lunch once. And, yeah, that was really nice. As for just other unconventional, there isn't really a huge amount, because I'm quite a picky eater. But when it comes to meat, I tend to want to try new, different meats. There is buffalo on my to-do list, so that is probably one that I'm going to be doing at some point, and I'm looking forward to that. And I've been told crocodile is apparently very good, so probably going to have to try that as well. Next is, what was your worst injury ever? Well, we're going to have to go back in time, about 20 years. So when I was about nearly 3 years old, I was on a little, like, push bike thing. It was really small. I was only 2-ish. Um, and I was going down what was technically our driveway, and it had, like, a lot of bumps in it, because it was cobblestone, I believe, but, like, really big cobbles. And I hit a bump and fell right off the damn thing, smacked my face right into the ground, took out one of my teeth, which, don't worry, it's fixed now, because originally it wasn't. Took out one of my teeth, and also gashed a huge cut into my left eye, like just above my left eye, where your eyebrow is, just above there. I do still have the scar there to this day, but, it's one of those things that you don't really tend to see it unless you look really, really close. But the strange thing is that we still have the tooth that came out, and it's like grown over the years. Like it's it's really interesting because that was probably my worst injury ever. Other than that, I remember spraining both my left arm and my left leg, which hurt like an absolute sod. I was in primary school when I did it. I think I was in year 5, and basically there was a guy I used to fight with a lot. His name was Maxwell, um, and I was chasing after him, and because I think I can't remember what he did. I think he like slapped me about the rant or on the back of the head or something, and then bolted like people typically did back then. So I chased after him, and he hopped over a fence, almost broke his ankle. I landed funny and sprained both my left leg and my left arm because of the way I had to land to avoid doing the exact same thing. And it hurt like an absolute sod. But I'd probably say falling off the bike when I was 2 probably is the worst one. And moving on, we have Ram Ranch with, what's the best 5.7 loadout you can give? And fun enough, it's going to be China again, because China just has that much. There's the T-34-85 Guy, there's the M18, there's the IS-2. For your SPAA, there's the ZSD-63. For your CAS, there's the P-47D-30. And there's also I don't know if it's gone up in BR, but I think it hasn't, the TU2S44. I believe that's still 5.7. Might not be, I don't remember. But that plane is amazing in ground forces. That is probably the best 5.7 loadout I can give, because you get a medium tank, you get a tank, well, a light tank, even though it should be classed as a tank destroyer. A heavy tank, you get an SPAA, which is absolutely amazing. You then get a P-47, which can carry 2 1,000-pound bombs and a single 500-pound bomb. And, of course, it's got great performance. And then the Tu-2S, which is relatively tanky. It's got great gunners. It does have forward armament, so you can defend yourself from the front as well. It has 2 Shavaks, which I'd recommend loading Tracer. And it also carries 4 500-kilogram bombs. So that's really what I can give, so to speak, in that regard. Other than that, there's not really many nations that come to mind when it comes to 5.7. Like, Germany does have quite a few options, but the problem is that Germany's vehicles tend to be a bit more outclassed in terms of that respect. Like, they do have good armor, but the armor tends to be negated and things like that. So that's generally what I find anyway. And the second question from Ram Ranch, which is rather appropriate because that looks to be ranch dressing or something for his profile picture. What is your favourite sauce? I'm quite basic, so probably ketchup, just because ketchup. Outside of that, there's a really nice homemade sauce that my mum makes for a chicken casserole, and that's fucking beautiful. But obviously that's something homemade, so that doesn't really count. And yeah, that's pretty much it. As I said earlier, I'm quite a picky eater, so don't expect me to be, like, amazing in terms of that. And moving on to the next questions, we have Snipso with, what do you think is the most undertiered vehicle? That is a very simple answer. Number one, well, there's actually a couple. Number one, the XP50. Why is it 4.0? It could probably go to like 5.0, 5.3, maybe even 5.7. I've took it there. I've took it against Jets and I still clubbed. So yeah, I do think the XP50 needs to go up in BR. As for a tank, definitely the M4A3 105. I have mentioned that before. Because I think it's just stupid. Obviously, the B1 Biz and the B12, you can't really do anything about them because their guns are crap. And for boats, the SF40s, because those things are stupid, especially the one with the 20 mils. His second question is, what do you think is the worst map in the game? There's a few candidates for this. Any winter map, because it's a ULQ paradise, and people always shoot through hills perfectly, because, yeah. Then you've got Vietnam for aircraft, not ground forces. I actually quite like that map. That's quite my sort of style. But the Vietnam for aircraft, you can get in props. And I don't mean like 5.0, 6.0 props with high performance. No. I once joined a friend of mine at 2.0 in a stock Fokker D21 on Vietnam. So yeah, not ideal. And other than that, there isn't really like a huge amount of candidates. I'd probably say another one is what's its face? Boulogne-sur-Mer. That's good for like top tier jets. Same with Vietnam, but Boulogne-sur-Mer you used to get in like 2.7 props, and I remember once I was on that map in a Chinese B-25. It took me 15 minutes to get to the enemy side of the map. I killed one base and crippled another. And then I had to fly back to base at low altitude because you had to go low because they will just climb above you. If you don't go low, you was dead. In a bomber, at least. And I flew for a good 15 minutes back. Got bounced on the way back by a BF-109 G2 who was looking for a kill. Shot him down, lost an engine, and ended up having to slam it into the cliffs of Dover because I had no real control to lift it over the freaking cliffs. And yeah, that map could definitely do. I know they don't put it in rotation anymore from what I've seen, but that map could definitely do with a rework, and that's putting that lightly. And we come to the final questions with Turd the Turtle Gamer. What do you want to be? This is more of a life question. So when I asked him about it, I was like, what do you mean by this? And he said, this is more of a life question. What do you want to be later in life? Well, I still want to keep the channel going to some extent, because obviously, I don't know if some of you know, if you skipped here, if you watched all the way here, I've now got a job, which I will be starting on, I believe, the 27th, I think it is? Yes, 27th. Obviously, this video will be a bit past after that, but you know, I have started a job which I'll be starting on Monday next week, and I'm looking forward to it. But generally speaking, I want to be a games designer. I obviously did 3 years of games tech and things like that in games development. I do want to do that, and I do want to really like develop my skills further. But otherwise. For the moment, obviously, I want to work in retail, get some experience, and just get better myself as a person, really. And then after that, probably look for jobs in the games industry and try and get in there. I tried getting in at Dan Buster Studios, but they rejected me, and yeah, I'm just trying to like do that, really. Otherwise, I just want to be myself and just be what I presented myself to be, and obviously the channel is still going to be going whilst I'm working at this new role, but yeah, it's one of those things, really. And the second question is actually quite an interesting one. How did your community pop off? I believe I joined at around 800 subscribers, so like before then. Very slow to begin with. We was stuck at like 143 subscribers for like, I think 4 months. We just weren't going up in subs. Even with like new videos releasing, reviews releasing on new vehicles, things like that. And then we just slowly started to climb as we came into the 2020s. And it just started going up from there. And obviously now we're at like 2010 subscribers and things like that. And generally it was just because I kept on with the reviews, I kept on with the gameplay, and obviously did things like the dive bombing tutorial, which is obviously getting an update. And then obviously in 2021 we did the bomber guide, and obviously we've recently done the strike aircraft guide. So things like that really, and that's really what caused the community to really pop off. And obviously we've grown over time since then. But anyway, that is the end of all the questions. I'd like to thank you all if you've watched the entire bloody thing. If you have, honestly, thank you so much. My voice is pretty much dead at this point, but, you know, got to trade some sacrifice to do something. I'd like to thank everyone for leaving their questions and everything. Obviously, if you want to ask any more questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. And I will leave you all for today. I hope you've enjoyed today's long video, because this was a long one. And I will see you all on the next one.